two, one.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour podcast. I am back continuing the division previews, this time with the AFC South. This is the last of the ones we're going to do this weekend to get back on track. And this is a division that was an interesting roller coaster in 2025. At one point in time, the Colts looked like they might end up being one of the best teams and best record in the AFC, and they ended up slipping and missing the playoffs altogether. We will start from worst all the way to first, or from first all the way to worst in terms of finishes. And the first place team a year ago was the Jacksonville Jaguars. They finished first in the AFC South, but they lost in the wild card round, 13-4. Among their losses, Travis Etienne, their running back, moved on, went to New Orleans. We talked about him in the last episode. They lost a couple of depth wide receivers in Tim Patrick and De'Ami Brown, cornerback Greg Newsome, and linebacker Devin Lloyd. They did not really do a lot to fill the hole at running back, which we will talk about. They brought in Chris Rodriguez, the veteran journeyman from the Commanders. They brought in Albert Regis at defensive tackle and Dane Jackson at corner. Last year, Trevor Lawrence was quarterback 4. Bishal Tootin, running back 53, expected to kind of be the man at running back this year. Wide receiver, a strong point. Brian Thomas Jr., great as a rookie, struggled a little bit last year, struggled with his connection to Trevor Lawrence, was wide receiver 43. Parker Washington, wide receiver 27, really stepped up last year. Jacoby Meyer, who they acquired midseason, finished as wide receiver 32. Travis Hunter, an interesting pickup, number 2 overall pick, wide receiver 97, missed a chunk of time due to injury at the end of the season. Brenton Strange took over at tight end, was tight end 23. So 13-4, probably a best case scenario, both in the way the division played out, in the way that their schedule played out, and the way they were able to produce on the field. Trevor Lawrence, also quarterback 4. A lot of that thanks to a career high in rushing yardage and rushing touchdowns. His completion percentage, not where you would totally like it. Can they get that up? I think they can. He obviously has QB1 upside. I'd probably feel better if I had him as my high-end QB2, but the upside is there. The backfield is the real question. With Etienne gone to New Orleans, they're putting a lot of faith in Bishal Tootin and second-year player LaQuint Allen, along with the veteran Rodriguez. They will get some production for fantasy. I think Rodriguez is the best value in terms of where he's going in drafts, but it's hard to feel great about either of them. Tootin, probably the guy that's going to be the best producer. Wide receiver, more of a question. Travis Hunter, they've said, is going to play cornerback, so that probably limits his offensive upside. Brian Thomas Jr. is the one that is the biggest question. He was incredible as a rookie, really struggled a lot last year. Will he land somewhere in the middle? That is the hope. But Parker Washington, the sneaky pickup for me in that passing game. And then Brent Strange, kind of a tight end too. Let's move on to the Houston Texans. The Texans finished 12-5. They were second in the division last year. They lost in the divisional round. A tough game to the New England Patriots. Among their losses, Joe Mixon, who really didn't play for them last year, is gone. Christian Kirk, the wide receiver, went to San Francisco, and they lost linebacker Christian Harris. They made a big acquisition to grab David Montgomery at running back from the Detroit Lions. They brought in safety Reed Blankenship and David Clowney at edge to boost the defense, and they're constantly remaking this offensive line, adding Keelan Rutledge and Caden McDonald this year. CJ Stroud, quarterback 21 last year. Woody Marks as a rookie, running back 29, was kind of the number 2 with Nick Chubb ascended. Probably be the number 2 again. Nico Collins, wide receiver 8, great. Their top passing game option. 2 rookies. Didn't do a lot last year. Jaden Higgins was wide receiver 47. Jalen Noel, only wide receiver 92. Dalton Schultz was tight end 10. They get Tank Dell back. So that makes it a little bit of a question. I like the David Montgomery pickup. When Joe Mixon was last available and healthy in 2024, he was a top 24 running back, great running back 2 option, had some running back 1 upside some weeks. I think you could see the same thing for Montgomery, who was always a great workhorse back in Detroit. Woody Marks slipping in there probably remains some flex value. I like Nico Collins in the passing game. CJ Stroud is at least going to be a QB2. Can he get closer to where he was as a rookie? That's a question. Offensive line always in shuffle, but he has a good set of weapons. I think this is a big year for Jaden Higgins to try to step up. There were some veterans there to take some of the pressure off last year, but they would like him to be a number 2. And what happens with Noel and Tank Dell returning, there's going to be a lot of players in the mix. I like Schultz more as a tight end 2 than where he finished at tight end 10 last year. Number 3rd team in the division was the Indianapolis Colts. They started hot and heavy, and then injuries really took a toll. They ended up finishing 8-9. They gave Michael Pittman Jr., their best wide receiver, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost defensive tackle Kwity Paye, right tackle Braden Smith, Samson Ekebom on the defensive line, and safeties Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas. They brought in Arden Key and Jerry Tillery on the defensive line. They added Nick Westbrook at wide receiver and CJ Allen at linebacker. Daniel Jones returned. He was quarterback 17 last year, missed the back half of the season with Achilles tear. Can he kind of regain that great early season form? They are banking on it a little bit, a 2-year deal for him. Jonathan Taylor just got a big extension, was running back 4 last year. Is probably the heart of this offense. Alec Pierce got a huge wide receiver contract. Seemed to be a reason that they moved on from Michael Pittman. He's a little banged up right now, but can he establish himself as a true number 1? He was wide receiver 28 last year. He's had his moments the last couple of seasons, but they are asking a lot in stepping up. Josh Downs was wide receiver 44 last year. Tyler Warren as a rookie tight end 4, probably the best pass catcher in this unit. Wide range of outcomes for the Colts. I could see them pushing for the playoffs, pushing for 10 wins, being in the mix. I could also see them 7-8 wins where they ended up last year. A lot of it's going to depend on Daniel Jones. And is he healthy? Can he bounce back at the beginning of the season? If not, we're going to see Anthony Richardson. And I know that's not something Colts fans relish in fantasy. I love Jonathan Taylor. I love Tyler Warren. You have both of them. They are top 12 options at their position. Alec Pierce, kind of the wild card. His stock got a huge boost because when you get paid that kind of a contract, people are expecting a lot. Can he live up to that? Is it worth the draft capital you have to spend? That part I am not as sold on. And Daniel Jones, I would love it if he was my QB3. If I'm relying on him as an every week starter at QB2, I'm a little bit nervous because of health, because we don't know. We've seen the good Daniel Jones. We've seen the bad Daniel Jones. We've seen the really bad Daniel Jones. What are we going to get? A little bit hard to tell. 4th place team in the division last year was the Tennessee Titans. They finished in a dreadful spot, only 3-14. That led to Brian Callahan being fired mid-season. Robert Saleh in as head coach, Brian Dable in to run the offense. Those are good things. They lost Arden Key at edge, Chika Okonkwo, the tight end, moved on, and Lloyd Cushenberry at center. They brought in Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants at wide receiver, and they drafted Carnell Tate, so they are addressing the weapon options around Cam Ward. They brought in John Franklin Myers to strengthen the defensive line, Mitch Trubisky to be a good veteran backup quarterback, Daniel Bellinger in the tight end room, and Nicholas Singleton came in via draft to add to the running back room. Last year, Cam Ward was quarterback 22, Tony Pollard running back 23. Calvin Ridley missed a ton of time to injury, was only wide receiver 117. As rookies, Shamir Adike and Alec Ayomanor were wide receiver 50 and 55 respectively, and Gunnar Helm was tight end 31 as a rookie. Helm going to be asked to ascend in that tight end room with Chika Okonkwo gone. I like him as a tight end too. I think he has some upside. Elsewhere for fantasy, Cam Ward was a low-end QB2 last year. Could maybe go into the high-end range, but I still like him as a QB2 this year. Hopefully he can take some positive steps with Dable. Hopefully this offense takes some positive steps. Tony Pollard was a running back 2 last year. I don't think that changes. I still am not believing in Tyjae Spears. He can't seem to stay healthy or available. Nicholas Singleton, we'll see how he mixes in, how they use other backs. Wan'Dale Robinson, an interesting weapon. He has had some sneaky great seasons the last couple of years for the Giants. I like him as a wide receiver 3. Carnell Tate is the one I like best. They took him high in the draft for a reason. I think he can get into wide receiver 2 range. Calvin Ridley maybe swinging around to be a bargain, but it's hard to trust him as anything more than a wide receiver 4 or 5. And I think, Ayomanor and DK are going to be kind of depth players now. I'm really focused on Tate and Robinson as probably the top two contributors in that passing game. I think the Titans will be more fun to watch. I think it wouldn't surprise me if they won 6 to 9 games. I don't know that they're a playoff team yet, but I think they will be notably better. So that does it for the AFC South. I will be back next week talking NFC East, and then we will wrap up with the AFC East, then predictions, and then wouldn't you know it, it'll be time for the Week 1 preview. So until then, have a wonderful weekend.